I've been in this role for the last several years. Clearly today, with the way the pharmaceutical industry has evolved and the way drugs have evolved, our understanding of drugs has evolved, most companies now need medical professionals to be in a company. It ranges from understanding the epidemiology of a disease, understanding how the disease manifests, understanding diagnostics, treatment strategies, how treatment is evolving, what is the evidence that has come up for drugs for that particular disease. All that understanding becomes important for a role in the pharma industry. This is very fundamental and basic knowledge that is required for medical professionals. Good, that's an interesting question because I actually started my career in surgery. I wanted to become a general surgeon, but within a few weeks of getting into general surgery into KM, I changed my mind and I decided perhaps this was not my career. And I switched to thinking about a non-clinical or a more research-oriented line. It took me a few months to really try and figure out what I wanted to do, but eventually I landed up in pharmacology. And I think that was with a couple of things. My father had been in pharmaceutical industry for many years in sales, and he in fact suggested to me that nowadays companies need doctors. And then I spoke to a couple of people who are already working in pharma industry, and they advised me that it seems to be a good career option for the future. I got interested in it, I read about it. Interestingly, I got a break in Cipla for about 6 months to work as a doctor. That gave me a first-hand view of what happens in pharma industry, and I decided therefore to make this my career. So I worked for about 6 months in Cipla. I went and did my MD in pharmacology at the KM hospital again, and I came back into Cipla after I finished my MD. It has given me exposure not just to drugs and disease, but interacting with a huge range of professionals like doctors, business people, research and development colleagues, pharmacists, regulatory environment that is in the country. How do we get drugs approved, for example? It's also given me exposure overseas in terms of conferences, in terms of meeting leading physicians out of the country, how they treat disease, health systems in different parts of the world. So I think it's been a very, very interesting journey over the last many years. So typically a medical professional or anybody working in the medical department in a company has 4 or 5 key roles to play. One is answering important medical queries that come from the salespeople of the company, doctors from outside regarding their products, or anybody else. That sometime goes there, one. Second, often involved in meetings for strategies. These are for deciding how a particular product for a disease, what should be its clinical positioning, what should be its exact role as far as the treatment goes. So sitting in meetings to discuss that kind of stuff is a second thing. A third, sometimes time is spent on training, where we actually train the sales reps or the marketing professionals on the disease and on the drug. At times we also discuss related to drug safety. For example, if there are any side effects that happen or are reported, the evaluation of that particular side effect for that. And finally, we also spend time on clinical trials. If a drug has to undergo clinical trials to get approval, or we want to generate more data on a particular product of ours, what is the kind of clinical trial we want to set up? How do we want to generate that kind of data? So these are some of the things that we actively spend our time on. One is to be part of medical affairs team, where really the role is all about developing strategy for your medical products or drugs along with the marketing team, training of the representatives, making sure that the information about the product and the disease out there in the market is the right information, interacting with doctors and key opinion leaders regularly, organizing what we call advisory board meetings on the disease and the product. This is typically what a medical affairs professional would do. A second role is actually in clinical trials. We all know that in the Indian system, to get a new drug approval, we need to conduct what are called as phase 3 clinical trials. These are trials usually involving 200 to 300 patients. So drawing up of the protocol, identifying the clinical trial centers where this trial needs to be done, presenting this protocol and data to the regulatory authorities in Delhi, making sure the trial runs smoothly, completing the trial, doing a statistical analysis of the data, finishing a report and submitting it to the regulators in order to get approval. So therefore, a second role is actually in the clinical trials team. A possible third role could be in what we call pharmacovigilance. And pharmacovigilance actually stands for drug safety. This is a very new and emerging role that many medical doctors may find interesting. We all know that drugs that are sold are associated with side effects. And when a drug gets marketed, the knowledge that we have about the drug is always not sufficient. Only when it is used on a large scale, we gain more and more knowledge. And typically, side effects is one of the things that we learn more as the drug is used more and more. So collecting that data, collating it, identifying whether the side effect is actually because of the drug, deciding whether any new things are emerging in terms of safety is something in pharmacovigilance. That's another role which I think is quite interesting. Right. So typically in the medical department, there are either MDs in pharmacology, medicine or others. There are medical graduates, M.B.B.S, PhDs, M.Pharms, even bachelors in pharmacy with some additional experience, or masters in biological sciences. These are usually the people that are recruited into the medical team. Today, many of you may know that there are companies who manufacture, for example, hip implants for hip replacement surgery, knee replacement surgery, coronary stents. So doctors are also being recruited into these to really understand, to share with doctors knowledge about these kinds of devices. So I do know of people who are now working exclusively in the medical device industry. So I think that's another area which needs to be further explored. I think which some people will find it interesting. Cosmetology is another area where some doctors do participate. There are companies which exclusively work on cosmetology. In fact, even today I would say fast-moving consumer goods in the health sector, right, also need medical doctors to guide them on the disease. One of the key things that I think doctors play an important role in these kinds of industries is to make sure that the claims that are made by companies are appropriate. And there's a fine balance one has to do between marketing of a product and making sure that the information and the understanding of the product that is conveyed to the public is correct. Because they want to get into not just the medical departments of companies, they want to get into business strategy, they want to get into marketing, they are also getting into consulting. Many agencies like McKinsey's, Ernst & Young are having health consulting arms. So they are also getting into health consulting. So I think there are many new opportunities for an MBBS doctor rather than just looking at what you would do for, do I want surgery, gynecology, ophthalmology, what do I want to become? But remember, there are other options which are open to you as well. So as far as roles for pharmaceutical industry is concerned, I am not so sure if an international degree will hold greater weightage than what you can get in India. I think our MD Pharmacology is reasonably good to give you a career jump in the pharma industry. I have so many colleagues and professionals who have not just grown in their company and in India, but have also gone overseas and been posted in different countries to handle medical affairs in those countries. Pharmaceutical medicine, that's a course which is available in the UK that people can actually become physicians in pharmaceutical medicine. There are courses in medical statistics, there are courses in epidemiology, like public health, all of which can be of additional value for doctors. And of course, things like business management, etc. can always be of help. One thing of interest to know is nowadays we are into what are called as biologic agents or monoclonal antibodies. And I think when we come out of medical schools, or when we didn't know much about this. I think this is an emerging area for the future because 50% of new drugs under development worldwide are actually monoclonal antibodies. I think a deeper understanding of monoclonal antibodies, a deeper understanding of what are called as biomarkers. Biomarkers is actually what you measure in the blood or the plasma or on your gene to know if you will respond to a particular drug. I think so this area of personalized medicine is gaining more importance. And I would imagine this would be a very subspecialized area in this field. But diagnostics is becoming extremely important. Today, for example, for cancer treatment, it's always recommended for many types of cancers to have a specific genetic test done to know whether you will respond to a drug or not. So I think a better understanding of molecular diagnostics, as it is called, could also become more and more relevant for the pharmaceutical industry. So I think the most exciting thing for me in my last 15-20 years that I've been in Cipla is actually treatment for HIV/AIDS. In the mid-90s, it was discovered that using 3 different drugs in combination could help reduce mortality in HIV/AIDS. The costs of this treatment were enormous, but we had the opportunity, I would say a unique opportunity in Cipla, to actually combine 3 drugs in a single pill and make it available for patients at $1 a day or less than that. And I think this completely transformed the way HIV has been treated. From only having 10,000 patients in the world on treatment in those days, we now have close to 20 million people on HIV treatment, thanks to the decision Cipla took. I think it's a lot hard work, there is no doubt about that. As a medical doctor in the company, you have a huge responsibility, which means that whenever there is any problem, people look at you to be the person who will always be on the right side of the truth about a particular drug or a disease or a side effect. So it's for you to maintain the right balance between achieving good business growth for the company and at the same time making sure that the information that we put out on the drugs is the right information for doctors and patients. So we are dealing with a multitude of people across different functions. I think that's the second challenge that we have to remember, that we have to understand what each one is looking for. And we are often at the center of everything. Being a doctor, we are expected to know a little of everything. So we must know what the patient understands. We must also know what the company wants. So the first thing we look for any medical person or any person in the medical department is actually deep knowledge, because medical department is a seat of knowledge. So first and foremost, how interested are you in really learning and understanding a subject? Are you ready to go deep and understand the details of the subject? These are really the core that we look for. Third, extremely important in this line, as I mentioned earlier, is that we have to be on the right side of things. So integrity, being truthful about a product is critical in how you come across to your people. Third, are you able to talk to a number of people of different functions? Communication skills becomes very important because it is expected that medical people will be speaking to medical professionals outside, presenting to companies all the time on the disease and the product. So I think good communication skills and presentation skills also become important. So as a pharmaceutical industry, clearly India is today really rapidly growing. But what India is really good at right now is manufacturing on a large scale quality drugs at very affordable prices. And therefore India exports huge amount of generic drugs to the world. Some of you may be surprised to know that it is believed that 1 in 4 generic drugs that comes into the United States actually comes from India. And those are huge numbers. It's billions and billions of tablets. As far as development of new chemical entities is concerned, I think we are still behind. New drug discovery is still almost always done in the West. But I think what India has started doing is doing what we call incremental innovation. We are taking existing molecules and giving them in a better way to the patient. So as far as manufacturing and supply is concerned, I think India is very, very high. As far as the new drug development is concerned, I think we are going to still take time to catch up. So remember friends, if you are looking for a career in pharma industry, this is not the routine thing that a doctor would do. But it can be very exciting. It can be a contribution that you will make, which is probably to the same extent that any doctor would do who is practicing, sometimes even more. But it is certainly a different and a fascinating career that you can do. It involves research, it involves data management, it involves marketing, it involves regulatory requirements. I think it involves multiple things that sometimes you may not get exposure to as a medical doctor practicing.